Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will commence in 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to all of our attendees. Thank you for taking the time to join us here this afternoon, and welcome to our esteemed panelists as well, who I'll introduce in just a moment. My name is Sarah Hess, and I'm an Associate Economic Affairs Officer at the UN's Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESQA, based in Beirut. It's a pleasure to be able to join you today for what we hope will be a very compelling COP16 side event focused on technical solutions to promote water security and to prevent land degradation at the city scale. This session grew out of a collaboration between UN Habitat and ESQA around an adaptation fund project, Resilient Water Solutions Against Climate Change, that works to address climate change impacts on water scarcity in cities hosting displaced persons in both Lebanon and Jordan. I'll be sharing a little bit more information about that project in just a moment. First, I would like to highlight some of the challenges our region faces with respect to climate change, water scarcity, drought, and rapid urbanization. According to projections from ESQA's Regional Initiative for the Assessment of Climate Change Impacts on Water Resources and Socioeconomic Vulnerability in the Arab Region, RICAR, temperatures in the region will rise 4 to 5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, as well as increases in rainfall variability and the occurrence of extreme weather events, including drought. For example, in the case of Iraq, RICAR projections show an increase of up to 11% frequency in droughts by mid-century. The vast majority of our population, nearly 90%, live in water-scarce countries. And in addition to this, Arab countries are experiencing rapid urbanization, particularly in the major urban centers, and this is due to very high levels of population growth. In fact, the highest levels of population growth globally. There are also other aggravating factors to take into account, and this includes conflict, unfortunately. Prior to the current conflict in Lebanon and Jordan, these two countries hosted the highest number of refugees per capita in the world, first Lebanon, followed by Jordan. The war in Lebanon has significantly affected the provision of safe water for people living particularly in the south of the country. Israeli airstrikes since September 2024 have severely damaged the water infrastructure in southern areas, cutting off access to clean water for at least 30,000 people. Since September 2024, more than 200,000 people have been displaced within Lebanon, and we'll be touching a bit on the theme of displacement, confronting climate change impacts also within urban environments. And of course, these impacts pale in comparison to the severe destruction of water infrastructure and damage to water supplies in the case of Gaza. In many ways, the challenges that we saw at the launch of our Adaptation Fund project in October 2021 have only increased as a result of conflict, destruction, and now internal displacement as well. We had hoped to have several of our colleagues and project collaborators, George Sadeh from UN Habitat Lebanon and Christian Elchekia from the Lebanese Organization for Studies and Training, here with us today in Riyadh. Unfortunately, they're not able to join us, but I'll be providing a little bit of information on their work in the country, and we'll also now be including more examples from across the region on urban interventions to address water scarcity, including from Sudan and Saudi Arabia. So before we launch into the panel discussion, first let me introduce our participants. We have Reem Hamis. She's the project manager for Morsatek in Lebanon. Noha Kataish, urban planning and design expert from LDK RSS in Jordan. Salim Darwish, who is the advisor to the Minister of Agriculture of Lebanon. Fernando Morillo, who is a human settlement officer here in Saudi Arabia with UN Habitat. And Mariam Shai, who is an urban planner with AMAC here in Saudi Arabia as well. So before we launch into their panel discussion or their presentations, I'll be sharing a bit of George Sadeh's presentation on the Adaptation Fund project so that you have an idea of the inspiration for this session. Could we have those slides? from the technical team? Sorry. Okay, well, I'll start. So it's an adaptation fund project that launched in October 2021 called Resilient Water Solutions Against Climate Change in Jordan and Lebanon. It's about a $14 million project with a duration of 4 years. It will be concluding later next year. The implementing partners are UNICEF, ESWA, and it's the lead implementing entity is UN Habitat. And of course, we are collaborating also with national designated authorities, including the Ministries of Environment and Agriculture. There's 3 project sites, one in Zahle in Lebanon, and 2 in Jordan, in Irbid and Mafraq. And these are areas that have hosted large numbers of displaced persons and also are experiencing the impacts of water scarcity and climate change. The project has 4 components. We'll be highlighting component 1 today. Reem Hamis and also Noha Kataish work on this component, which focuses on developing climate mainstreamed urban plans for the target project areas. Components 2 and 3 are focused more on rainwater harvesting infrastructure and expanding the use of treated wastewater and irrigation. And finally, component 4 is why we're here today. It's focused on knowledge sharing, sharing the best practices and lessons learned from this particular project. So I will let Nuha and Reem get more into these topics, but this is an example from component 1 focused on the urban planning area of work. 2 and 3, like I mentioned, are focused on rainwater harvesting and wastewater reuse. There's also a small permaculture component. And this is component 4 on knowledge sharing. So one area that I wanted to highlight that George was going to speak about today was the rooftop rainwater harvesting work that's been done in Lebanon as part of this project. So far, 8 rooftop rainwater harvesting systems have been installed in public schools in Lebanon with a total storage volume of 150 meters cubed and almost 7,000 beneficiaries. And actually, one thing I wanted to highlight is that, unfortunately, given the conflicts in Lebanon, a lot of the public schools have been used to host displaced persons, and actually, the rooftop rainwater harvesting infrastructure has been used also to provide safe water supplies to those who've been displaced internally in Lebanon. Some technical information, and these are photos of the actual rooftop rainwater harvesting installations in Lebanon. Okay, thank you very much. Happy to provide more information on that after in the Q&A session as well. I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Reem Hamis from Morsetek, who will be discussing climate mainstreamed urban planning in Lebanon.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you all for your attendance. So I'll be presenting and diving into the project that Sarah briefly presented. So the Resilient Water Solution Against Climate Change in Jordan and in Lebanon. I'll be presenting the project in Zahle, so basically in Lebanon. And the objective of this project is to increase the resilience of local communities against climate change. Especially when we speak about the local communities, we speak about the residents as well as the displaced population. So the main objectives of the project is to mainstream adaptation and gender into territorial strategies and master plan to address the water issue, and then also to increase the capacity of the local municipalities to address these issues, so to adapt to climate change and to consider also the gender aspect. So Zahle is a particular territory or district in Lebanon. It is one of it accommodates a lot of displaced population, Syrian refugees, because it's not really far from the Masna border crossing, which is the busiest crossing between Lebanon and Syria. So since 2011, it hosted a lot of the displaced populations, and this has somehow contributed to how the social and economic dynamics of the district are shaped today. So the main phases of the project consist, first of all, of understanding what is currently going on in the district. So we started by a diagnostic. We understand the actual situation and the key challenges. To do so, we relied heavily on participatory approaches. That includes site visits, but also doing interviews, speaking with people, key informant interviews, focus group discussions. And then based on our understanding, we worked on planning scenarios to develop a territorial strategies. So in these planning scenarios, we integrated adaptation and we integrated the resilience aspect. We looked at different climate scenarios and the evolution of climate change. And also we worked closely with key stakeholders. So we did workshops to present the diagnostic and also to establish risk chains and develop a vision with the key stakeholders. And then we are working also on the development and master plans at the municipal level. We're working closely with local municipalities. And as Sarah mentioned, the fourth component of the project is the sharing of knowledge. So we integrated this into the project through the development of a knowledge management platform and observatory. So as I mentioned, we rely heavily on participatory approaches because it will be so arrogant to tell the people who live there that we know how to design your region better than you would know. So we spoke with the people, we understood their challenges, what they're facing, what they're dealing with, what they need, and then we did some focused groups, workshops. Within the workshop, we had like focus group discussions, and we talked about the health and well-being of the local population, key infrastructure systems, agriculture sector, tourism and services, as well as the water cycle and biodiversity. So based on these discussions and based on the literature review that we did and the study that we did to understand the situation, we realized and we concluded that the Zahle district is facing a lot of challenges today. So first of all, there's an overlap of crisis in Lebanon in general and in Zahle in particular, as there's war, political instabilities, displaced population, and the economic crisis, to name a few. And this has impacted the technical, financial, and human capacity of the municipalities to respond to crisis and to address climate issue, because it seems like a faraway issue. We have more urgent things to deal with. There's also the urban sprawl and informal settlement, especially in agricultural area, that has impacted the soil, that has increased the stress on water resources. There's water management issues, so overuse of underground water, mismanagement of existing water, leakages, etc. When it rains, there's a huge pressure on the sewage system, so it overflows and then we deal with floods. There are electricity shortages, inadequate shifts in land use, fragmentation also in land use planning. And to add to that, we have the climate change issue. So how is Zahle district impacted by climate change? We had a hard time finding specialized data, but these are the data that are available on the World Climate Knowledge Platform, which is by the World Bank. And it's in the Bekaa, for the Bekaa region, which Bekaa Valley, so I forgot to mention this, but Zahle district is in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. So if we look at these climate projections, we see already that climate temperatures have increased between 1960 and today. They have increased by almost 1 degree. But if we look at the projections and if we look at the worst case scenario, temperature may reach average temperatures, just to be clear, may reach 20 degrees, and that's a lot. And then also, if we look at the precipitation, we see that overall, precipitation averages are decreasing. So we have, so the average is basically decreasing. But if we look at the peaks, we see that we have higher peaks and lower peaks, which means that we would have heavy rainfall episodes, and then we could have drought periods, which will impact water availability and water scarcity. So why was it important to understand climate change and integrate climate issues into the territorial planning? Because climate change is happening. We're already dealing with the consequences. We see based on the projections that the impacts will be even more severe, the hazards will be more severe. And these will be impacting key economic and social sectors. And it will impact the urban planning, the transport sector, the agriculture, and so on. And it could increase the damage on infrastructure, existing infrastructure. Keeping this in mind, we started integrating all of this analysis into the assessment, to assess how the hazards will evolve, considering their evolution on the midterm and long term. And we worked by municipality. So we worked on the different municipalities. We looked at the hazard today. We gave a score to the hazard from 1 to 5. And then we saw how this hazard is likely to evolve based on the projections, based on our understanding of the territory. And this allowed us to to be able to map the hazard, to map the evolution of risk, and to identify the municipalities that we would be liking to work on to increase their resilience. So it kind of helped us prioritize the actions to be taken. While working on this project, we faced a lot of challenges. First of all, we had challenges in data collection. There is a lack of data, and even when there is data available, it's hard to get hold of the existing data. And then the political instability has impacted the project. First of all, it impacted the number of workshop attendees. So we did the workshop like a year ago. The war hasn't started yet. It didn't start yet a year ago. But then we had like some political instability in the region, which impacted the mobilization of key stakeholders. And then after the war erupted in Lebanon, we had to put on hold the visit to municipalities momentarily. And I would like to highlight and note that the Bekaa region and Zahra district were heavily impacted by the bombings and strikes of Israel on Lebanon. So despite these challenges, we were able to come up with a lot of results. So basically the diagnostic report that allows to guide our action. And then also we worked on different territorial planning scenarios as presented. So the first territorial planning scenario is we consider business as usual. So we keep on using fossil fuel. We keep on, the urban sprawl continues. The pressure on the environment continues. So that's what the territory could look like. And we also did an assessment on how this could impact the different economic systems. The second scenario shows a more balanced development. So it's heading towards sustainable development, but not everything is there yet. And then we have the third scenario, which is the perfectly green scenario, as we called it, which is the vision we would like to have, this is the ambition that we would like to reach, but we are aware of the institutional challenges of the crisis that we have today. So we will be hoping to reach this scenario throughout the development. So this work wouldn't have been possible without the collaboration of the team. So it was a collaboration between Morris and CETEC and Habib Dib's office with Antoine Credy. So I wanted, before concluding this session, to mention these participants, and you have the contact, so don't hesitate to get in touch with them. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reem. And Thank you for this great example of how you're using science-based assessments of climate risk to develop territorial planning scenarios. I think it was quite precise and clear. Now we'll move to Nuha Kataish, who will be speaking about similar efforts, but within the case of Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. I'll present in Arabic language, but the slides are in English, so we can collaborate later on with the Q&As in English also. Yes. في الحقيقة أنا بدي يعني أول شيء أحكي إنه أنا بمثل الفريق العامل على المشروع اللي هو تحالف شركة LDK Consultants مع الجمعية العلمية الملكية، عاملين على نفس المشروع تقريباً ولكن ضمن حدود المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية في إقليم الشمال. الجزء اللي حابة أشاركه معاكم اليوم اللي هو أكثر نركز على موضوع بناء القدرات، لأنه الجانب التحليلي والسيناريوهات تقريباً مشابهة للي تم العمل عليه في لبنان. بس بدنا يعني بدي أشارك معاكم هاي التجربة، لأنه بناء القدرات ومشاركة المجتمع هي أحد أساسيات استدامة أي مشروع، خاصة مشاريع التخطيط. المنطقة الجغرافية اللي اشتغلنا عليها هم مدينتين، مدينة المفرق ومدينة إربد، بقعوا بشمال الأردن، كل واحدة فيهم في محافظة مختلفة. الأردن مقسمة إلى محافظات، والمحافظات مقسمة إلى بلديات، والبلدية مقسمة إلى مناطق إدارية. المنطقتين الشيء المشترك بينهم واللي كان أحد أسباب اختيار UN لهدول المنطقتين لتنفيذ المشروع إنه هم مناطق حدودية بيشتركوا مع الجمهورية السورية بحدود، وبالتالي هي مجتمعات مستضيفة لعدد كبير من اللاجئين. يعني إذا بدنا نحكي عن نسبة اللاجئين المسجلة اللي هي حسب دائرة الإحصاءات العامة بتتراوح ما بين 22 و 28%، ولكن على الواقع هي النسبة أعلى من هيك بكتير، وبانتظار 2025 تعطينا الرقم الحقيقي تقريباً. فهذا كان أحد التحديات اللي في هدول المدينتين. مدينة إربد بتغطي مساحة 360 كيلومتر مربع، ومدينة المفرق هي أصغر منها 115 كيلومتر مربع. عدد سكان مدينة إربد قارب المليون بالعام 2022 وزاد شوية بال2023. المفرق 160 ألف، فمساحة كبيرة، عدد سكان قليل، ولكن فيها تحديات كبيرة. كان أهمها التحديات المناخية اللي اشتغلنا عليها كمان ووضحت معانا. هلأ ليش كيف تم العمل؟ احنا اشتغلنا على جانبين. الجانب الأول اللي هو التحليل القطاعي، المؤثرات المناخية والتغيرات المناخية اللي أثرت ضمن السيناريوهات نفسها وضمن نفس الكلايمت موديلينج اللي تم العمل عليه في لبنان الشقيقة. احنا طبقنا نفس الشيء وطلعنا بمتغيرات أو مؤثرات مناخية رح تشكل خطر بهدول المنطقتين. كان أهمها موضوع الفيضانات المفاجئة، الهطول المطري، والارتفاع درجة الحرارة أو زيادة عدد أيام الحر في المنطقتين. الجانب الثاني اللي هو كان التحليل الجغرافي، إنه إيش الميزات الجغرافية لكل منطقة. هم تقريبا طبيعتهم سهلية، ولكن إربد أرضها زراعية خصبة، المفرق فيها أراضي زراعية ولكن تعتمد أكثر على الآبار الارتوازية أو المياه الجوفية والتنتين. يعني بدي أحكي إقليم الشمال بالأردن هو سلة للغذاء في الأردن، وبيأثر على الأمن الغذائي من ناحية الإمدادات ومن ناحية توفر الموارد. فعشان هيك متعلق كتير بموضوع الإيفنت اللي إحنا فيه هلأ، اللي هو بيحكي عن الأرض وأهمية الأرض كمورد للحياة. كمان ركزنا على موضوع الحوكمة في البلديتين، ولمسنا وين نقاط الضعف اللي موجودة في نظام الحوكمة والتشريعات الناظمة للعملية التخطيطية اللي هي بتحكم تقريبا كل المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية باستثناء مدينة عمان لها قانونها ونظامها المستقل. ليش الأدوات اللي بدي أطرحها عليكم اليوم، ليش إحنا كنا حريصين على إنه نطورها؟ لأنه الثلاثة مخاطر اللي بتأثر على هدول المدينتين بدنا نشوف على أي مناطق أكثر لحتى نساعد صناع القرار وين يتوجهوا بالتدخلات اللي لازم يسووها، وحتى تساعدنا إحنا في المرحلة القادمة بإعداد مخططات حضرية منعة في مواجهة التغير المناخي وين لازم تكون الحلول، وين الأولوية، أولوية البلدية لوين لازم تتجه وبأي منطقة. فعشان نركب هاي كل المخاطر مع بعض ونطلع بخارطة واحدة تراكمية لمخاطر المناخ، طورنا خلينا نحكي هي أداة اعتمدت على نظم المعلومات الجغرافية. زي ما هون بدي أخذ مثال بس من الريسكس اللي اشتغلناها حتى تكون الأداء أكثر وضوحاً، إنه باستخدام نظم المعلومات الجغرافية أو GIS قسمنا البلدية لشبكة. هاي الشبكة مربعات، كل مربع 250 في 250. طبعاً هو السكيل مش ثابت، إحنا جربنا أكثر من سكيل وتبين إنه 250 بيكون أكثر دقة تبعاً لمقياس المدن اللي اشتغلنا عليهم، وأسقطنا عليه الإسقاطات المناخية اللي طلعت نتيجة التحليل اللي اشتغلوا عليه خبراء المناخ اللي معانا. فبينت معانا زي ما أنتم شايفين عندنا 3 ألوان. إحنا يمكن هون بنختلف شوي عن لبنان، هم اشتغلوا على سكيل اوف 5، إحنا اشتغلنا على سكيل اوف 3 اللي هو الهاي وميديوم ولو. المربعات الحمراء هي الأكثر عرضة للخطر. هاي الخارطة بتمثل خطر الفيضانات في مدينة إربد، والمربعات اللي باللون البرتقالي هو الخطر متوسط، والأصفر هو الخطر متدني. متدني لا يعني نفي الخطر، يعني هاي المناطق كمان فيها عرضة ولكن نسبة قليلة جداً. هاي كانت أول جزء من مجموعة الأدوات اللي اشتغلنا عليها. هلأ هاي الجريد أي مدينة ممكن تاخد هذا التول وتغير بسكيل المربعات حسب سكيل المدينة أو حسب سكيل الخطر. لما ننزل كمان بالمرحلة القادمة على مستوى الأحياء يمكن السكيل كمان يصغر، يصير 100 متر في 100 متر، وبالتالي أنت بتعرف بالضبط وين تتوجه في المدينة تبعتك لإيجاد الحلول المناسبة أو التدخلات الحضرية. رافق الخريطة الجغرافية تحليل، خليني بدي أسميه تحليل كمي، إنه طورنا معادلات لكل ريسك، أعطينا سكور على مستوى المناطق. زي ما أنتم شايفين بأول كولوم أو بأول عمود هي مناطق البلدية، لأنها كل بلدية مقسمة لمناطق إدارية. يعني الحالة اللي عم نشتغل عليها مدينة إربد مقسمة ل6 مناطق إدارية، كل منطقة في إلها ميزاتها وإلها إدارتها، ما بدي أحكي مستقلة عن البلدية الرئيسية، ولكن هي عشان تسهيل تقديم الخدمات. فأعطينا أعلى المربعات الحمراء أخذت أعلى علامة اللي هي 3، والمتوسط 2 و1، وجمعنا خطر كل خطر أخذ تقييم. يعني جمعنا الفيضانات مثلا هون أول منطقة اللي هي اسمها فوعرة أخذت 93. يمكن لما نطلع على كل الجدول رح نشوف مين المناطق اللي داخل حدود البلدية اللي أكثر عرضة لمخاطر الفيضانات، وكذلك ارتفاع درجة الحرارة، وأيضا موضوع الهطول المطري. طبعا كانت الإسقاطات بتتقاطع مع المناطق المأهولة والمناطق الخالية. المربعات هاي الشبكة اللي أنا حكيت عنها ساعدتنا لما أسقطنا عليها طبقة المناطق المأهولة أو الأيربانايزد أرياز، بيّن وين هل في مناطق مأهولة من السكان تحت الخطر أو لا. هاي ساعدتنا كمان إنه نحدد وين موقع الخطر. هلأ بالنتيجة بدنا نعرف طب مين المنطقة اللي أكثر أولوية للتدخل. أولوية البلدية تعالج كل المخاطر. طب وين بدنا نتوجه بالتدخلات الحضرية تبعنا عشان نساعد صناع القرار حتى بعد ما إحنا نترك المشروع هم بإمكانهم يعرفوا بالضبط وين التدخلات ويدخلوا على هاي التول. إذا قرروا ينموا باتجاه معين يزيدوا عدد أو الرقم مساحة المربعات المأهولة، وبالتالي ببين هل هم دخلوا تحت الخطر أو لساتهم هم بالسيف سايد. فجمعنا كل الريسكس اللي موجودة وطلعنا بالخارطة اللي من شوي عرضتها عليكم، اللي هي هاي اللي هي الخريطة التجميعية للمناطق حسب السكورز اللي أخذتها، اللي هو الجدول الأخير. الحلو بهاي الأداة واللي عن جد يعني حابة أسمع عليها فيدباك من الأصحاب الخبرة وحتى الممارسين وحضراتكم جميعاً، إنه قديش ممكن إحنا نطور عليها يعني لحتى تساعد موظفين البلدية وصناع القرار، رؤساء البلديات، أو حتى اللي أعلى من هيك على مستوى الوطن، إنه كيف ممكن إيش المخاطر اللي بتحيط بهاي المناطق اللي عم بيشتغلوا عليها، وين تدخلات لازم تصير. يعني بدي أخذ مثال آخر منطقة مبينة بالجدول الثالث اللي هي منطقة نعيمة. إذا عم نطلع هي ماخذ سكور عالي، يعني المنطقة كلياتها رغم إنه نسبة البناء فيها قليلة جدا والمنطقة شبه خالية، ولكن هي عرضة للخطر بالنسبة خاصة موضوع الفيضانات. فإذا قرر رئيس البلدية إنه يروح يتوسع بالتحضر بالجزء اللي خالي، لازم يطلع هون ويشوف إنه هو ماخذ 3، يعني هو المنطقة كلياتها تحت الخطر. فإذا بده يتوسع بهداك الاتجاه لازم يكون تحت اشتراطات وظروف معينة، يعني الأبنية اللي بدها تصير لازم تكون مقاومة للفيضانات. الجزء أو العامل الثاني اللي كمان بيساعد باستدامة المشروع بعد ما ينتهي ويتم تسليمه للمستخدم النهائي، اللي هو كمان ركزت عليه الدكتورة ريم، اللي هو موضوع المشاركة المجتمعية، الكوميونيتي بارتيسيبيشن. وفعلا كانت جدا مذهلة مشاركة المجتمع. يعني احنا كنا حريصين من بداية المشروع يعني بكل مراحله يكون عندنا أكثر من ورشة عمل، سواء مع المجتمع المحلي بهاي المناطق. في له يعني عدة صور من التمثيل، يعني في تمثيل للاجئين كان يكون معنا بورش العمل، تمثيل للمرأة، تمثيل خليني أحكي ذوي الإعاقة أو أصحاب الاحتياجات الخاصة، وكذلك الكبار في السن، الشباب. يعني إربد لأنها بتحتضن جامعتين رئيسيات في الأردن، ففيها تعدد ثقافي جميل جدا الصراحة. ولما تمشي في المدينة بتلمس هاي التعددية، وإنه المدينة متجهة نحو الشبابية أكثر. فكل النشاطات اللي موجودة هي لخدمة المؤسسات التعليمية الكبيرة اللي موجودة فيها. فمن التجربة اللي بحب أشارككم فيها كمان إنه تعدد الأدوات والأنشطة خلال ورش العمل هي اللي بتحفز المواطنين على المشاركة. الجزء الأول عادة من الورشة لما يكون زي هيك إلقاء ما بتلاقيش التفاعل، وحتى بفترة الأسئلة ما بيكون فيه كتير، لكن لما نعطيهم أنشطة، عشان هيك كانت التجربة إنه إحنا نوعنا كتير باستخدام الأنشطة. يعني استخدمنا نشاط اسمه بطاقات الأفكار، أسئلة من خلال المنتيميتر، ولما كنا نرجع على مكاتبنا ونعمل فاليديشن للي أخذناه من الكوميونيتي وللي اشتغلناه، الأوفيس ورك اللي عملناه واليوزنج كل السوفت ويرز والأشياء اللي استخدمناها، لقينا إنه في ألاينمنت كان كتير كبير. والناس ساعدونا بالأخص في البداية لما اشتغلنا على السبيشيو تيمبورال ايربن جروث، انه ليش المدينه عم تنمو بهذا الشكل. لما رجعنا للناس سالناهم، هم ساعدونا بايش كانوا المين درايفرز behind this kind of urbanization. فكانت صراحه تجربه لطيفه، وبتمنى انه عن جد كل البلديات حتى بري بلانينج لازم يكون الكوميونتي لازم له دور. وكنا احنا هون نتناقش مع الزملاء في الجلسه بالتحضير انه قديش مهم الناس هم اللي يبنوا مخططهم، وتعطيهم انت شعور بالتملك انه هذا المخطط منهم والهم، مش جاي عليهم اسقاط من ناس اجوا اشتغلوا عندهم شهرين زمن وراحوا. كمان ما اذهلنا انه واحد من الاسئله اللي وجهناها للمواطنين بورشه العمل قبل ما نعرض عليهم خرائط المخاطر المناخيه، انه طلبنا منهم باستخدام المنتيميتر والخارطه اللي كانت على تليفوناتهم، ومنهم يحكوا لنا وين مواقع خطر الفيضانات في المدينه تبعهم. واسقطوها طبعا بشكل تقريبي. هاي الخارطه اللي عم بتشوفوها اللي هي الكوميونتي مابينج الموجوده، هاي المواقع اللوكيشن اوف اكسبكتد فلودز اللي ممكن تصير بإربد. لما انتهى الاكسبرت من اعداد الكلايمت موديلينج فور الفلودز، وجدنا انه في تقارب تقريبا، يعني عاده بالبحوث اكثر من 65% بيعتبروه تطابق كامل. يعني تفاجأنا الصراحة من دقة المعلومات اللي أعطونا إياها المواطنين. مثلا بس بدنا نلاحظ إنه بالجهة اللي خليني أحكي الشمالية الشرقية ما حدا حط هناك كل أي دوت إنه هون في فلود ريسكس رغم إنها موجودة. لما رجعنا تساءلنا إنه ليش ما حدا حط هناك، طب ما هي مثلا هيها طالعة آت ريسك. تبين هاي المنطقة مش مأهولة ومش مطروقة، فالناس ما بيعرفوا عنها لأنها جاي طرفية، مع أنها فيها وادي رئيسي وبالشتاء بفيض، بس لأنه الناس ما بتشوفها فما يعني ما أعطونا إياها. صراحة ذهلتنا دقة المعلومة اللي أنت ممكن تاخذها من المجتمع. يعني المعلومة دقيقة من مصدرها ومن أصحاب الناس اللي عايشين في المدينة. كون موضوعنا The Land الكوب 16، فبدي أشارك واحد من التحديات الرئيسية اللي بتواجه واحدة من المناطق اللي اشتغلنا عليها لمدينة إربد. مدينة إربد تمتاز تربتها أنها تربة خصبة للزراعة، ولكن للأسف التغول عليها من التوسع الحضري أدى إلى تآكل هاي الأراضي. النص الأول من الدايجرام اللي أنتم شايفينه ببين ازدياد، ولكن هذا الازدياد ناتج عن زيادة مساحة البلدية، مش عن ازدياد الأراضي الزراعية، ولكن هي في انحدار. وإذا ما انتبهنا لموضوع وجهنا النمو العمراني بشكل جيد بهاي المنطقة، الأراضي الزراعية تقريبا كلياتها، خاصة إذا بنلاحظ على خارطة الأيربن جروث الألوان الفاتحة هاي كلها بآخر 10 سنين. للأسف صار الانتشار أفقي وعشوائي وبكل الاتجاهات بعيدا عن المركز، لأنه المركز تقريبا 100% developed، يعني السنترال ديستريكتس لإربد almost full يعني. فعشان هيك صار التوجه للأراضي الزراعية. فهذا بده حل عن طريق اللاند يوز استراتيجي اللي سوري أنا رجع لورا هذا. أوكي. اللاند يوز استراتيجي كمان كان من الصعوبة بمكان إنه إحنا نحط استراتيجية لاستعمالات الأراضي على منطقة فيها كل هاي التحديات. فطلعنا خلينا نحكي conceptual framework أو برضه بتول تانية إنه أنا كيف بدي أعالج كل هاي المشاكل. فحاولنا نشوف كل خطر إيش أثره على الواقع الحال بالمدينة. فهدول الدوائر يعني عشان كمان إنه أي بلدية ممكن تستخدم هاي التول بيمثلوا المدخلات لاستراتيجية استعمالات الأراضي. يعني إذا بدي أطلع على الأيربانيزيشن والهوت دايز، ليش حطيناهم جنب بعض؟ يعني الترتيب ما بيكون عشوائي، الترتيب بيكون مدروس وحسب الأولوية ومين الأكثر خطراً. لأنه بنعرف إنه ازدياد ارتفاع درجات الحرارة وازدياد عدد أيام الحر أكثر شيء بشعر في المناطق اللي هي مأهولة في المباني واللي هي فيها أنشطة إنسان وأنشطة اقتصادية وحركة سيارات وإلى آخره. بزيد الشعور اللي هو بنحكي له الأربن هيت آيلاند إمباكت أو الجزر الحرارية الحضرية. فتقاطع هدول الاثنين إيش لازم أعمل بالاستعمالات الأراضي اللي موجودة هناك؟ هل لازم أزيد من التكثيف العمراني وبالتالي أزيد من الأثر، ولا لازم أعدل على البنية التحتية الموجودة وأدخل فيها الجرين سولوشنز لحتى إنها تخفف من الانبعاثات وتخفف من الشعور بالحرارة؟ كل هاي المدخلات لازم اللاند يوز استراتيجي بس تنحط استراتيجية استعمالات الأراضي هي مش فقط لتوجيه الاستثمارات أو توجيه النواحي الاقتصادية، هي إلها انعكاسات على البيئة وعلى الحياة الاجتماعية، خاصة لما تكون بتشتغل على منطقة ما بدي أحكي مثلا هي عاصمة الدولة زي عمان فيها تعددية ثقافية. هدول المدن لهم خصوصية، في لهم طبيعة اجتماعية خاصة وطبيعة ثقافية. فلازم الاستراتيجية لازم تراعي هاي المدخلات. اللي طلعنا منه استراتيجية استعمالات الأراضي برضو كانت يعني لو في متسع من الوقت كنت بحب أنا يعني أعرض عليكم الاستراتيجية لأنها وثيقة يعني كبيرة وهامة، وحاولنا نغطي فيها كل السيكتورز اللي اشتغلنا عليها. فالاستراتيجية رح تطبق بمسارين. المسار الأول نحن قسمنا المناطق لتقسيم جغرافي، في مناطق صنفناها أنها مناطق مركزية اللي هي نسبة الإعمار فيها أكثر من 50%، ومناطق طرفية وليست ريفية peripheral واتس نوت رورال، لأنه الكثافة فيها أقل ومحيطة في المركز كموقع جغرافي. فاللاند يوز استراتيجي اللي بدها تطبق بالمناطق الوسطية different aspects عن اللي بدها تطبق بالperipheral areas. وكذلك طلعنا بالاستراتيجيات قطاعية، يعني عندي مشاكل بقطاع الاقتصاد، ايش اللاند يوز استراتيجي بدها تعالج بهاي يعني بدي أعطي مثال إنه كل الخدمات عندنا موجودة موجودة بالخدمات بالمنطقة المركزية والأنشطة الاقتصادية موجودة هناك، بينما المناطق المحيطية هي الأقل حظاً وتمارس فيها بنسميها الانفورمال اكتيفيتيز اللي هي نشاطات اقتصادية ولكن غير مرخصة وغير منظمة. فالاستراتيجية لازم تشمل هاي وتدخلها بالتشريعات وتقننها زي ما بنستعمل احنا بالمصطلح اللغة العربية. طلعنا بالسيناريوهات نفس الشيء اللي هو العمل كالمعتاد لوين رايحين. السيناريو الوسط احنا سميناه اللي هو to maintain current living standards، يعني بده يكون أكثر mitigation rather than adaptation. والسيناريو اللي احنا كمان رح يكون البريفيرد سيناريو اللي رح نحط له اكشنز وننصح فيه صناع القرار اللي هو سيناريو سي. هذا لا ينفي انه انا ممكن اخذ يعني الاكشنز حاليه هلا وشوي تكون من سيناريو بي. الليسنز ليرند من كل المشروع اللي تعلمناه اللي هو موضوع او اللي طلعنا فيها النتائج بالاضافه للاعمال الفنيه، انه موضوع الكوميونتي انجيجمنت رئيسي جدا في انجاح اي مخطط. التحليل المبني على المخاطر بيعطيك مخطط ناجح بالنهايه. وموضوع انه كمان كان شيء بيركزوا عليه اليو ان هابيتات اللي هم اور كلاينتس، انه السكيلابيليتي، انه قديش ممكن المدن الثانيه او البلديات الثانيه يستفيدوا من هاي التول، وحتى نفس البلديات يعني بعد ما احنا نترك المشروع كيف ممكن هم يشتغلوا عليه. وان شاء الله انه يكون قدمنا شيء كويس. شكرا جزيلا، شكرا. وان شاء الله بالكيو اند ايز we can collaborate more on the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nuha. And thank you for sharing an example of how you're using climate change scenarios, mapping technologies, risk scoring systems to really be able to understand these complex urban environments and prioritize interventions in terms of adaptation. And you brought it out in your conclusions, the importance of community engagement. And this is also something that Reem mentioned, that even though you're working on very technical solutions, in fact, there is a really important human element to the work that you do. Ultimately, urban planning is a social science, so it's very important to include people in everything. Now we'll head back to Lebanon with Dr. Salim Darwish, the advisor to the Minister of Agriculture of Lebanon. He'll be providing us a little more perspective on some of the challenges that impact land degradation, as well as access to clean water resources in the country, and providing examples of rainwater harvesting and other interventions within the Lebanon context. Thank you so much, Salim.
Thank you for the organizer and UN Habitat. In fact, today I will present how to fight the drought. In fact, a drought is very, very old. And to fight the drought, we have two ways only, not three. The first one is related to God, and we should pray أو ما يعرف بصلاة الاستسقاء. It was, if you want, during decades and decades. The second one is the result of the human intervention on our planet and due to climate change. So to fight the drought, we have some people, some intervention we are doing on the field, on agriculture, on industry, in our lives that take us to drought, if you want, issues. And we have other activities that we are doing to combating drought. So, in fact, here we need to know that I'm from the 70 generation, and I remember very well we have in Lebanon a very rainful season from October till March, April, even May. Now, rainful season start on December and not all the years, and end at February and March. So, which mean we have before 6 months of rainful season. Now they are reduced to 3 months. More and more. We have rainfall. Rainfall was before in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. It was, if you want, the precipitation was very, if you want, repartition of precipitation was during the month. Now we have 2, 3, or 4 days with high precipitation, and the whole days of the month it's drought. So, you know, it's impact our lives as human. It's impact the production, agriculture production. It's impact our all issues of our life. So how we can fight drought? We have rainfall decreased. We have temperature increasing. So we have smallholders in urban areas. They have, for example, 1,000 square meters, 1,000 and a half, 2,000 square meters. So our strategy at the Ministry of Agriculture is to help these farmers in terms of building a reservoir of water starting from 10 square cubic meters until 50 or 60, it depends. It's related to the area of the farm, of the area in urban areas. As you know, in Lebanon, all lands are should be for agriculture. Even in urban areas now, even in suburbs of Beirut, we have lands that nowadays are cultivated with greenhouses and they are producing fresh vegetables and so on. The second issue is related to how to fight the drought within our, if you want, action. So the second action is related to the adaptation fund as a project funded by, implemented by UN Habitat, is regarding the agrivoltaic nursery. So it's an innovating project. We lose a lot of green area in our, if you want, cities, mainly in Bekaa region and other areas, and to try to combat or to fight the drought, we need to increase the green areas. And green areas in urban areas are, we don't have a lot of, if you want, luxury to do it. So we need to do something related to what happens. So in terms of water harvesting, as mentioned by the project was harvest water from 8 schools. It's around 150 cubic meters, and it's a good initiative, and it's a pilot project. We have in Lebanon the Minister of Agriculture, the Ministry of Environment, the Minister of Interior, and the Minister of Higher Education are now well involved, and they are looking for funds to, if you want, to go further with this pilot project to other areas and so on. This is first thing. Second thing, in municipality of Zahle, the mayor the municipality of Zahle have voted a law or this municipality decree or decision asking inhabitants in Zahle, when they are going to build apartments, to have a reservoir of water using the rainfall harvesting. And it depends, it's related to the area of the building. If, for example, we have 600 square meters of apartments, we need at least to have 10 or 15 cubic meter reservoir of water. It should be used for irrigate the garden nearby, and instead to go inland and without any, if you want, use, suitable or sustainable use. The second issue regarding this project with agrivoltaic nursery, we are going to grow a forestation species, and we divide it into 2 parts. The first part is for municipal distribution, and in this issue we have a lot of municipal lands. They are not used, they are abandoned, and we need to, if you want, increase the green area, and these species are suitable for the region. For example, we have Lebanese pine, Pinus libani, we have cypress, we have, if you want, a lot of other activity. And the second activity is to have a crops for households for small-scale municipal distribution, which means we can distribute and we can produce and distribute later on za'atar times, sumac. We can do it in our garden or in rooftops. We can have also prickly pear, which is very important. We can use it for different activities, and we have a lot of other species that we can do it. So the main objective is we need to, as you know, there is a relation between green areas and the drought and rainfall and so on. So in this issue, we are going to distribute at least 20,000 seedlings by 25 during the next year. And we hope that this nursery will increase the production and to cover more municipalities. In this issue, we have the greening area increasing, and of course, the ecosystem will be, if you want, feasible to have more rainfall and to combat desertification and drought. Second issue is related to water harvesting. You know, we have water harvesting treatment station in Zahli, and normally the water is not used later on with farmers. So the project aims, or one of the project aims, is to use this water for suitable crops. They are suitable for use for wastewater treated, and also to use it for irrigate the municipal areas with forest, trees, and so on. So in this issue, we are going straight, and it's a pilot area. While regarding the Ministry of Agriculture, we have a project, as I told you, on the scale of the farmer, which is a water reservoir for 10 cubic meters, and we have around, the 2,500 farmers will benefit from all Lebanon, of course, and 50% of them are in the urban areas, and 30% of the whole applicants are women. So in this issue, we are increasing also the question of gender. The next step is related to be more, if you want, not at macroeconomic level and not all macro, but meso economic level. It was related to hill lakes. So as you know, Lebanon is mainly 70% of the area are mountains, valleys, and we have plains. So we have a lot of rainfall and snows on the mountains. And during spring, these waters go with the river, and obviously it go to the Mediterranean Sea. So now we have we achieved 23 hill lakes with a fund from IFAD, and the capacity, it was between 20,000 square meters till 100,000 square meters, and now we have ongoing project that we are going to increase to have around 15 hill lakes in different areas of Lebanon. And these hill lakes, the main source of water is the rainfall and the snow that coming during the spring to have water. So in this issue, we can combat desertification and drought, and also with increasing the greening area, but here in terms of agricultural crops. So, and we have also, we will use the new techniques for irrigation, and with association for irrigation for farmers, and the law was voted. It depends from the Ministry of Energy and of Water. In this issue, we are going, and we have some research project, and we have some, if you want, pilot projects in different areas in Lebanon that we started, and we need to achieve it as soon as possible, and the results will be diffused later on. The main issue is to see what are the crops with high added value, and not, if you want, need a lot of water for irrigation, because you know, with 2 or 3 hill lakes, the areas was abundant nearby. Now we have on Budai, for example, site in Baalbek, near Baalbek, near city of Baalbek, we have now 35 farmers who are benefiting from these hill lakes. So this hill lake. Other one is in Nahli, also near Baalbek. It was a, also we don't have any, land was not practicable or not cultivable. Now we have around 27 farmers, and we ask them to crop, to have pulses, if you want to crop pulses, because they don't need all for the whole summer water. So we are doing this at micro-level issue with the project funded by UN Habitat and also with the Ministry of Agriculture with the reservoirs of waters. We are doing at the small of region of area, and we have big project related to have a big dams in Lebanon that can be useful to combat desertification, or also drought. Just I want to finish here. I need to mention that even to combating drought, because we have Lebanon is we have water, but the last decade the water is increasing and we are dipping a lot of water. So now the problem is how to maximize the use of water and making less use of water and have more, if you want, production or productivity. This is what we are going on the same time, and we are doing that by increasing capacity building for farmers, how in good agricultural practices regarding the varieties they are need to select it, how we gonna deal with these crops during the period of production, and that's all. This is what I want to mention, and ready for any question later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salim, for sharing really a wealth of different interventions that you can implement at the urban scale or a larger scale, including everything from rooftop rainwater harvesting, the lake reservoirs you mentioned, more water efficient crops, capacity building for farmers. There's a lot to follow up on there. And I also just wanted to highlight that Salim will be speaking again on December 10th at the G20 Pavilion, focusing on water savings in urban farming. So there'll be an opportunity to really go into depth on the urban farming topic. Now we'll leave the Levant and we'll move to Fernando Morillo, who is the Human Settlement Officer from UN Habitat here in Saudi Arabia, who will be speaking with us about urban interventions to combat land degradation with examples from Sudan and also other areas from the region if you'd like. I know you have a lot of experience all around, so please.
Sure,
Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah, and my pleasure to be here with you. And I would like, before starting formally, to appreciate, first of all, that we are in a forum discussing about desertification and climate change. This is something that should be highlighted because it's an special event. And within this particular panel, I think that is very important, and I'm very happy to hear about all those initiatives from Jordan, Lebanon, and so on. I am bringing two countries, actually, for discussion. One is Sudan, and the other is Saudi Arabia, because I'm based now in Saudi Arabia, and I thought that it would be nice to compare, because the two countries are, of course, very different, but still in their own way finding solutions to desertification and climate change. And I think that the two countries somehow can be compared, because from UN Habitat we have projects in both countries. So I will start with Sudan, because it's the country in which I was based before, and I think that there are a lot of good solutions to analyze and to consider in this panel. One of these is, just to give you a context, Sudan is a big country that actually was split because South Sudan was independent in 2013. And then Sudan started to face a huge humanitarian crisis even before. Just the region of Darfur was having 4 million displaced people. And when you have such a big number of displaced people in an area that is already facing a lot of drought problems, and urbanization become, rather than a natural event, become a very special event, because you have most of the towns and cities overwhelmed by people coming from other areas. That is already a big urbanization challenge, because you have a situation in which most of municipalities cannot really provide services, and you start to have a lot of tensions, particularly in terms of building materials, because those people coming need to have a roof and start to develop solution using fire bricks. From an environmental point of view, fire bricks has 3 problems. One is that it's consuming a lot of water to produce the brick. The second problem is that it needs timber to fire the bricks. and in an area where deforestation is huge, to find timber to fire bricks is another big solution. And the third one is that most of the labor, the people producing the fire bricks, are childs. So you start to have a lot of social issues related to childs working in production of fire bricks. Also, you have a lot of very bad treatment of people, and you create a lot of social problems and also illegal problems. So the government in Darfur, the three governorates, impose a law that forbids the use of fire bricks. This creates a big tension because already having a lot of problems, fire bricks become a kind of illegal activity. So a lot of people was dedicated also to produce fire bricks in a very legal way, just taking land whenever they can, firing bricks, and that creates also an issue of land degradation and destroying the land that was still fertile for production. So one project that was a joint project between UN Habitat and UNEP was trying to find solutions in terms of development of alternative technique solution to the fire bricks. And then come an innovation in terms of a technique that is called stabilizer blocks. That is the production of blocks instead of bricks produced with hand press machines that can be using 50% less of water and not using fire bricks at all, using cement instead of fire bricks. So the introduction of these techniques was really revolutionary for Darfur. It's very well known in other regions of the world, but in Darfur was not used before, and was a way to subsidize, let's say, or to avoid that people use fire bricks, to stop all the abuse on children, all the deforestation, and also alleviate the political tension related to the forbidden fire bricks, to find an alternative. So what UN Habitat has done together with UNEP was introducing the hand press machine, training the people, and the methodology starts with that is called a pilot demonstration project, particularly targeting public buildings, schools, hospitals, built completely with fire bricks, with stabilizer blocks, and through that way to demonstrate the feasibility to use this also in housing. So a first phase of the project was building 700 in the 3 states. And was, of course, a big challenge in terms of where to build all those public facilities. And what I find it very interesting is that was exactly the other way around. Instead of starting with a master plan, start with introduction of technology, moving up to develop solution in community planning, bringing participation, as was mentioned before, bringing a lot of things that normally should be there, but in a humanitarian situation are not there at all. On the contrary, become a kind of threat. And then from this, built up on urban planning, proper urban planning, that is receiving all these kind of solutions that is in some way is ensuring that new neighborhoods, those are built for expansion of the cities, are built with a stabilizer block instead of fire bricks. So this gives a room for a lot of development in terms of design, planning, bringing also the issue of water harvesting, bringing a lot of technologies that were scattered in the same project, what we call model neighborhoods, neighborhoods that were sustainable from a point of view of planting new trees, having the refugees moving from their very bad situation to proper settlement, and a kind of encouragement for people to stay rather than keep displaced. Because one of the problems in Darfur is that people flock to the main cities, but later on keep going until they don't find a land where to settle. So this particular project was very important, and there are several publications that later on I can distribute in terms of how the project helped to settle the people, to settle communities and develop a kind of linkages. Now, the second project that I want to work is about in Saudi Arabia, that is, of course, completely different in terms of context, but it still is targeting the same solution in terms of how to help that communities can be settled, that can be sustainable, and also is fighting deforestation and drought in general. So UN Habitat is supporting the Ministry of Municipalities and Housing in 3 major initiatives. One that is called the National Urban Policy, that normally is dealing with urbanization, but the National Urban Policy is helping also, is having a huge project on forestation. And that is also, you know, forestation can be done in several different ways, using native trees, as my colleague was even talking before. But there are a lot of failure projects that if you are not having enough water to feed those trees, you will not be able to have this forestation program. So the national urbanization policy was targeting cities as a main realm for development of greening, parks, and also water management in terms of ensuring that this is really working. The second initiative is called Spatial Planning Act, that is a project that is trying to establish all this through a specific law, ensuring that any citizen can get some incentive to plant trees and to have a proper urban setting. And the third one is the reclassification and reconfiguration of municipalities that Saudi Arabia is involved in and is trying to organize the municipal boundaries and the municipal functions that are making sense in terms of municipal service, but particularly making more efficient use of water, because as you know, some areas in Saudi Arabia are also having a lot of stress in water management. So I think that these 3 initiatives are really helping Saudi Arabia in terms of addressing those urbanization issues, urban planning, facing these big climate changes challenges in a much more systematic manner, but still having the way forward from the government to lead that process and bringing the private sector, because it's really a public-private dialogue. The government alone cannot achieve most of these goals, really require the private sector to work together, but it's very difficult to do it. We don't have this tradition to really have a joint association. You know, private sector normally look for their own interests because it's the rule of the game, but we need really to develop clear understanding how to work together. My last word on this, I think that all these discussions are very important, but we need really to reflect deeply if our technical tools, our managerial structure, even our UN approach in terms of how to deal with these big challenges are really enough to deal with what the challenges are bringing, you know, the massive extinction of space, all the challenges that were mentioning, particularly when we have also war and humanitarian crisis. We really need to think about what is the best approach to deal with all these simultaneous challenges, because the threat of failure is really big, and we need to ensure that this is we are in the good track. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. And thank you for sharing such a contrast in the type of urban planning solutions. In the case of KSA, we see these very high-level urban planning efforts that also have impacts at the city level as well, obviously. And in the case of Sudan, it's interesting how just addressing the availability of building materials had huge implications beyond just building a single home. It affects the entire urban environment and really an exercise in placemaking in the end. Thank you. Moving to our last speaker, I'd like to welcome Mariam Shai, who's an urban planner from AMAC. Speaking of private sector involvement, we're happy to have a speaker who can address that. She'll be speaking about nature-based solutions to promote urban resilience.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. And I prepared myself to discuss nature-based solutions, but I couldn't stop myself making notes from all the presentations and the case studies that we were discussing. And it was really interesting to understand. We discussed so many different scales, so many geographic regions, but at the end of the day, we are all discussing the same issues, all the mitigation and adaptation strategies and actions that we're trying to adapt to different contexts. And at the end of the day, I think everything really goes down to how we approach our methodology, and the nature-based solutions really ends up to be a very good way of communicating that approach. Well, I also want to summarize later on my 10-minute speech with a very interesting case that can really build well on what we heard from Rim and Noha. I think it's always very interesting to see how the strategic documents, master plans, and the objectives that we set for the regions translate into the actual projects, and then how these actual projects translate into the results that are actually measurable, and we can actually understand how our strategies work in real life. So to start with, what are nature-based solutions and why it's so important and so popular nowadays, because we are hearing a lot, especially during this COP conference. It's been a hype. I think after 2015, it's not a big surprise that it became a very important part of our lives and the way how we approach things, maybe also because of the SDGs and the general shift of the strategy towards nature. I always like to refer to, we mentioned stakeholder engagement and how these different partnerships work together with Fernando. I think after 2015, it was really a very notable shift that we actually invited environment as a stakeholder in the table. We were very used to working through public-private partnership. Then we understood that, okay, we need to involve academia on the table, and then we invited civil society as another stakeholders. And after 2015, it was very obvious and notable that we gave significant voice to the environment, right? At the end of the day, I think since then, nature-based solutions started to be redefined and restructured several times. I like in 2022, I made notes, the last redefinition of these actions to protect, preserve, restore, and manage sustainable resources or modify freshwater, coastal, and marine ecosystems. And it was really interesting how I think in the past there was not enough emphasis given to the coastal projects and how we invited this element also in. And at the end of the day, I think the most interesting thing about the nature-based solutions, we discussed a lot of top-down frameworks, top-down approaches, but a really good thing, and I think the sweet spot about these actions are it's as much bottom-up as it's top-down. And technically, I know how much research and mapping has been done to collect all these actions, which is basically tacit knowledge represented in a structured way. I know my fellow colleagues and researchers who've done brilliant research in Africa mapping nature-based solutions. And it's always very interesting to see how small-scale nature-based solutions can generate big impact and how they can be replicated to different contexts. So yes, at the end of the day, nature-based solutions are a very bottom-up thing that we collected as a toolkit, as a framework that we are all able to share as a knowledge to each other. I had a luxury to work on a very interesting project in Georgia, which was defined by Land Use Master Plan as a strategic project. It was urban park, 200,000 square meter area. And the client was the same client, Tbilisi City Hall, who was the client for the Land Use Master Plan, right? So we were appointed as a designer, and first of all, I think in this process it's always very interesting how these projects happen, what's the framework of the structure, because usually it goes through tender. Municipalities do not want to have a lot of headache, and they also are very conscious about the budgeting of the project. In this case, 70% was given to the concept, to the idea. I think it's also very important when we want to have a creative, innovative result to give space for creativity and people to be innovative with that action, with their actions. And 1 year was given to the design process. And what I like about MBS, another thing is it involves a lot of co-design and co-creation. On top of the fact that we did a lot of engagement sessions, I think we all do a lot of engagement, a lot of stakeholder mapping, but we really involved community in the design process of all the design stages. And what I love about this project and the process the most is after the master plan was delivered to the client, we were requested to still be involved during the construction process as a sort of design supervision. And we noticed that the construction was taking longer than it was expected, and there was frustration building in the neighborhood. People could not understand what was happening. And we came up with something very creative with the collaboration of the local municipality. We took a little land, which was like part of the construction process. And it did not have much design significance. And we invited the neighborhood, we invited the communities. We told them, okay, let's do that together. Let's create a planting activity. And we gave them these little shrubs and plants, which does not mean anything. It does not require any extra input or resources to organize this. But you can imagine these little kids planting these little shrubs and saying, I will take care of this tree every day because it's my tree. And you could see before after of how it really built up the ownership to the project, and everybody really thinks that it's their own project right now. To zoom out a little bit, once again, I would like to add a couple of more things about the benefits of nature-based solutions and co-design. Well, technically, the great thing about MBS is you can avoid investing in gray infrastructure when you can be really creative and when you can experiment with different kind of resources, right? In this project, we really avoided to invest a lot by fixing damaged sewage lines, by figuring out, we created these natural ponds that could work as a flood control and some sort of drainage system, which was a very huge saving for the municipality. But by that, they were able to first not to risk the construction itself, because at the end of the day, it's a very costly process, but also, on the other hand, invest in, for example, we created a community center, which right now is functioning as it's providing free classes for the neighborhood. There are more than 10 classes that people are learning languages and dances and different kind of things. To summarize, I think I'm also being conscious of the time. Moving forward, I'm very curious, and I think everyone is curious where this whole entire process is going. I think we see a lot of technology involved, a lot of AI involved, which is, I think, the next step, and very exciting to see how these things will evolve. I think, if I remember, Ree mentioned the issues about the data collection. I think these things will be interesting to have a closer look at later on. And yeah, at the end of the day, in the world where things are arranged very top-down, I'm very happy to see that the actions and approaches which are really truly bottom-up and capture the unique identity, the core, and the tacit knowledge of the neighborhood, which we are always struggling not to lose, that this approach is becoming more and more advanced and more integrated of our professional lives. I think that's it. I think that was my summary. Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mariam, for these very interesting examples from the private sector and the ways that you're interacting at the community level in a very hands-on way. Really cool. So I'm going to ask one question for each of our panelists. You've all given so many examples of different interventions that you've worked on at different scales. And we've all mentioned the importance of involving the community in these efforts. So I'm wondering if you could give me just a 1-minute summary, each of you, on how you're taking the interventions and the work that you've done and really making sure that it's sustainable in the long term with the community, that they're adapting these approaches, that it's appealing to them, and it answers their needs, and they're going to continue to use the different tools that you've developed beyond your own involvement in the project.
Yeah. Thank you all for your presentations. It was super interesting to learn about the projects, and thank you, Sarah, for the question. I think in the Zahle project, we worked on the development of a strategy. So the strategy, even if we're off the project, so it functions on the medium term and long run. So it kind of provides guidelines to shape the city and the space, especially when we are designing risk maps. We are kind of guiding the interventions and telling people not to construct in these high-risk areas or to avert from these areas. And last but not least, so we worked a lot with the people, and we did the workshops to increase the ownership of the project, to increase their awareness, and we involved them also in the construction of risk chains. So we did this exercise to let them understand what are the different components of risk, so the hazards, vulnerability, and exposure, and for them to really understand what we speak about when we speak about climate risks and how it impacts their daily lives, because sometimes climate change seems like it's an issue that's really far away from our daily life. We don't care about it because we're not impacted. But in fact, everything, all sectors are impacted. Everyone is impacted in so many different ways. And so lastly, the establishment of a knowledge management platform, which is part of the component of the project, and we have included it in the Zahle project, allows to continue to share the knowledge. And this platform will be, we're not sure who will handle it, whether it will be the private sector or the public sector, or maybe a public-private partnership. But the idea is to have a one-stop shop for the data, because we struggled to get the data, to reach this data. And we believe in the importance of having informed decision-making. So we're making the data available to continue this on the long run.
Great, thank you, Reem. Noha?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Actually, sustainability, it's like the core of any community-level successful project. So by approaching the community and engage them within the process, even pre-planning and during the preparing the project, during the assessment, find solutions, putting land use strategies like the process that we present in our presentation about the case of Al-Mafraq and Irbid. Engaging the community will guarantee the, let's say, not fully sustainable project, but at least that the community, as Mariam mentioned, they will feel that they own this project, they design it, they build it, and they need to maintain it because it's their property and their ownership and their city. They want their city to be the best in all levels. But the other side of sustainability, since we are working with local authorities, the municipalities, we'd like to focus more on, let's say, the sustainable financial models, and build their financial models so they can maintain the project and implement the interventions later on. And this is actually, it's not we missed in our project, but it's not part of our areas to focus on. So we'll try, as let's say, side exercise with the municipalities, we'll try to help them to build their own financial models and not only waiting for any external supporting or financing resources. So they have to activate the land value capture and also the any land-based solutions for their municipalities to build their capacity, financial capacity actually. And this is an essential part for sustainability, and especially in municipalities like the one that we are working on. It's not the capital city, so the central government will not subsidize these municipalities to the level that they are expected to. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We haven't delved into finance in this session, but you're right, it is a very important component. Thank you.
Yeah.
Salim?
In fact, I think we should back to the public-private partnership. And I think the most important thing is to have more awareness campaign and sustainability for project. Now, we have a pilot project. I think later on, when the project ends up, everything will go on. Nobody will continue. So I think to duplicate, to ensure sustainability of project is important. Why? Because why private sector always is increasing and making profit? Because they have a target, an objective. While public sector, we are situation of Lebanon. We are asking for project to have funds for project. And when the project end up, everything will go on. So I think we need to build and to coordinate and to collaborate in close collaboration with the private sector, the public sector, and also to have this partnership. The private sector alone it can continue, but when it have this joint venture between the public and private, I think is very important. Communication is very important, I think. We have a lot of success story or lesson learned, and we don't have any communication. So yeah, I think we need to be more, if you want, popular and coming back to the people and go to them and explain what happened, what are the main challenges, and how we can communicate and make public campaign of awareness regarding all issue of desertification, of drought, of climate change. Just I give you an example. You go to a country with have scarcity of water, and you go inside and you have a lot, you can take your shower 3-4 times per day. I think it should be maybe something regulation that you can take only one shower, and when you arrive to a such quantity of water, you will not have water to take your shower. I think we should do it because everything, we paid our room, room rate, but in fact we see that we are free to do everything. We cannot do it. So when it should be paid, I think even when we ask farmers to pay for water for irrigation, I think it should be better also to pay citizens to use water, and I think it's very important something that we can do it with artificial intelligence, AI, later on, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. Go ahead, Fernando.
Yes. I think that when we talk about public participation, community engagement in subjects like climate change, we need to be very responsible, because it happened to me in one session that people said, okay, what do you want me to do? To kill myself after hearing all this? So I think that these two countries that I brought the attention give us some clue. For instance, in the case of Sudan, the issue of public participation start training people to produce the blocks. Very successful. When people saw, okay, I can produce the block for my house, very happy, but what is next? I already contribute some labor to build a public building, but how will build my house? No money. So the issue of public participation brings you immediately to the next step, what we will do next. Next was to develop what we call the 3-block approach. That was an invention to give 1 block for the public building, 1 block for your house, 1 block for the market to sell, that bring the issue of the public-private partnership. In the case of Saudi Arabia, also you have this issue of public participation, because in national policies, in regional development, afforestation, all these kind of policies, you need to have public participation, but you need to design it to really be in an evolution that is bringing the citizen to different level of solution rather than conflict, rather than despair. So I think that looking around all these countries, we can pick up different models that are suitable according to the particular culture and context in each country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fernando. And Mariam, finally.
Okay, I think a lot of important things were already said. I'll just summarize with 2 things that I would like to elaborate a little bit more on. Well, first, based on my experience, what I've observed is, as urban planners, architects, sometimes we over-design. We want to control everything too much, and then the outcomes really are very different than what we thought they would be. And it's always important when we go at the policy level to remain a little bit more flexible and to leave the process a little bit more open-ended rather than trying to control and predict the outcomes because they are very difficult. Negative roles, what I know and what I've worked on, are very effective when it comes to policy, when it comes to design policy. It's always very effective. And partnerships, I think, keeping the right balance of the right partnerships in every region and every city, it's different ratios, so it's always important to understand what's the situation and where to tackle and which stakeholder to reinforce.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists. Thank you to our attendees. It's been a pleasure having you today, and thank you to the organizers as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will commence in 5 minutes.
Good evening to you all. My name is Senthil Chinnasamy. I am the Chief Scientific Officer of Oxy Group. Oxy Group provides services related to nature-based solutions using mangroves, trees, microalgae, and seaweeds. Is it not new? In addition to that, Oxy Group focuses on waste management. And our main focus is on waste treatment, waste recycling, waste to energy, and waste to wealth concepts. So before delving deep into the subject, let me present you with some facts. As you know, nearly 184 countries have pledged that they will achieve net zero emissions by 2050 or 2060, including Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has committed that it will achieve net zero emissions by 2060. So, if you see their Saudi Green Initiative, they have an ambitious target of reducing 278 million tons of CO2 by 2030. Question is, how are we going to achieve this? Is there any roadmap? So, let's see how this target can be achieved using innovative strategies very specific to arid areas. See this picture. You will see hot, harsh climate conditions prevailing in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, not only Saudi Arabia, and in the Middle East. And Middle East countries are bestowed with hot climate, arid land, subcar land, which is affected by salinity, seawater, mangrove ecosystems, arid forests. So, in nutshell, this region is bestowed with very harsh climate. So, with this harsh climate, is it possible to achieve carbon reduction? Because when we talk about carbon capture, the only thing which comes to our mind is afforestation, planting trees. Planting trees requires arable soil and fresh water. Unfortunately, we have limited resources in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. So if you see, this Middle East is bestowed with desert arid lands, subcar lands, coastal wetlands, sandstorms, frequent sandstorms you get, and abundant sunlight, long daylight hours, but less rainfall, no rivers. Do you think these are all resources or limitations? So now we need to answer this question. Now we are in a state to convert these limitations into opportunities. How are we going to do that one? That is very important. So, when we talk about carbon capture technologies specific to arid areas, we have to be extremely careful. These technologies or strategies developed by us should be location specific, because we need to consider the kind of soil, the kind of water quality, and the plant species growing in the arid lands, as well as the weather conditions. These are all very important to develop carbon capture strategies. And all these strategies should align with the goal of Saudi Green Initiative and the Vision 2030, as well as the 2060 target of achieving net zero emissions. Then we should develop localized methodologies, technologies to capture carbon that will enhance the credibility of these credits. Then comes, it will also comply with the world standards. So Oxy thought about all these limitations and came out with very interesting strategies to capture carbon for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as well as the Middle East countries. The first thing comes to our mind is going for afforestation, mangrove plantations, because mangrove plantations can be done and it can be grown using seawater. Whereas in the kingdom, you don't have fertile soil, you don't have fresh water. In this condition, what are all the options for us? This is what we thought about it, and Oxy recommends an interesting strategy of growing microalgae in the desert. So growing microalgae in the desert will definitely green the desert. And you can grow these microscopic plants in hypersaline seawater, and that captures carbon. And in that process, you get a valuable biomass rich in carbon that can be used for various applications. It is not only with the hypersaline seawater, which is of no use to anyone, except that we make fresh water out of desalination process. We can find quite a lot of uses for this valuable resource. So we consider this seawater and hypersaline seawater as a valuable resource for capturing carbon. The next one is wastewater. So you have quite a lot of wastewater available. In the cities, the utilities generate lots of wastewater. This wastewater is being just let out, and somewhere it is being utilized. But if you see the amount of wastewater utilization, it will be not very, very attractive. Whereas Oxy recommends that using this wastewater for growing algae. And we can find out various types of industrial wastewaters which are rich in nitrogen phosphorus that can be used for cultivating microalgae. After that, when the microalgae is growing in the ponds, they capture CO2, and you get a very valuable biomass. That valuable biomass can be used for various innovative applications, which are very new. So Oxy has demonstrated using this biomass produced from microalgae for producing valuable biocrude that can replace the petroleum crude. As you know, you all are well versed with petroleum crude, but we can convert this algal biomass into valuable biocrude. This biocrude is equivalent of petroleum crude, and it can offset carbon emissions. So this biocrude can be blended with petroleum crude at the rate of 10% blend or 20% blend, and it can significantly replace petroleum crude. By that, it reduces the carbon footprint, and you can offset carbon. It's a very interesting strategy which has been demonstrated. In addition to that, you can also convert this algal biomass into biochar, and this biochar can be applied to the soil to improve the soil fertility and to sequester carbon. In addition to that, we can also convert this biomass into biogas, which is a renewable source of energy, and you can upgrade it to bio-CNG. These are all the various applications. Then comes growing mangroves. So for growing mangroves, we have to depend on coastal areas. Coastal areas are like when we talk about growing and planting mangroves, there is a big limitation, the area availability. You have plenty of seawater. However, you have to identify suitable areas for growing mangroves. Without that, the mangrove survival will be very much, it will be very poor. In that case, we have to come out with innovative approaches. Here, we are trying to develop a new strategy of growing mangroves inland. Inland cultivation of mangroves, and it's an innovative strategy, and we are working on that one. And it has been demonstrated by our partner, Bower, in Oman. So this is an interesting strategy which we can think about in the future to promote carbon capture projects. In addition to that, we also recommend using treated wastewater for planting trees. So when we are thinking about growing trees, we need fresh water. Freshwater availability is limited in the kingdom as well as in the Middle East. In that case, we can definitely go for using wastewater streams. They can be used for growing trees, and you can also use the produced water released from the oil industries for growing mangroves. So these approaches can be very innovative, and it helps in capturing carbon, and we can develop new projects using these approaches in the arid lands. The other thing is, if you see in the east coast of Saudi Arabia, growing mangroves is quite challenging. So considering like throughout the world, the mangrove plantations are cultivated at a salinity of 35 ppt, whereas in the eastern coast, you can see the salinity ranges from 50 to 60 ppt. It's quite challenging to grow mangroves, and that's the reason why we suggest we need to develop mangrove strains or the varieties which can tolerate high concentrations of salt and can grow in hypersaline conditions. So this is one important strategy which we recommend for arid lands. The other thing is growing halophytes. As you know, if you travel around the sea coast, you will find quite a lot of halophytes growing like sesuvium and salicornia, which can tolerate high salt concentration, and they can grow in hypersaline conditions. You can grow them in the sea coast area for capturing carbon. This is an innovative strategy that can be thought about for capturing carbon in the Middle East countries. Then comes another interesting strategy. So as you know, in the kingdom, you get quite a lot of forestry waste, tree waste, and agriculture waste, animal waste, and waste from industry. And these waste, if you are not utilizing properly, it will go to a landfill site. When you put it in the landfill, it will undergo anaerobic digestion. It will emit lots of methane. When the methane is released, it is 28 times it is having a global warming potential of 28 times when compared to CO2. So in order to reduce methane, we can think about a novel strategy of recycling this waste, converting them into biochar. This biochar can be applied to the desert soil, and desert soil requires lots of organic carbon. And when the biochar is applied to the desert soil, the carbon concentration builds up, and it really rejuvenates the soil, and the soil become diverse. It has got lots of algae, microbes growing, and the vegetation started growing. That will change the entire habitat system, and you will get a fertile soil at the end. So you can convert the sand, which is non-productive, it is not fertile, into a valuable fertile sand for growing crops and trees. Then we have another interesting strategy which we are working on. Here you can see this is the sandy soil. It's a desert soil. It has got no nutrients and no carbon, no organic matter. But we can convert this soil into a very fertile ecosystem by combining algae and mosses, lichens, and creating biological soil crust. It's engineering biological soil crust. It's a novel approach that helps in improving your soil fertility and creating an ecosystem in the desert soil. Once you have the algal growth on the soil, they will form crusts. They will be having algae, lichens, and other kinds of microorganisms, and they will release lots of growth-promoting substances that promotes the vegetation. Then the entire setup ecosystem changes, the soil becomes fertile. So this is called engineering biological soil crust in the desert. The other approach is sequestering carbon using inorganic carbon sequestration in the soil. As you know, the soil has quite a lot of calcium and magnesium ions. And each ton of calcium can capture nearly about 1 ton of CO2, and each ton of magnesium can capture around 1.8 tons of CO2. So when your soil has enough quantities of calcium and magnesium, you can use that one and capture the CO2 and sequester the CO2. So this is a very innovative approach, and this is called inorganic soil carbon sequestration, and this can be thought about, and it doesn't require quite a lot of resources because your soil is already rich in calcium and magnesium. Then we have developed another interesting approach of using seawater as a valuable resource. As you know, seawater contains lots of calcium and magnesium ions, and we developed a strategy to precipitate that calcium and magnesium present in the seawater as carbonate and hydroxide salts. When you carbonate the seawater, the calcium and magnesium present in the seawater gets precipitated as carbonate and hydroxide salts, and that can be used for carbon sequestration. So in this approach, we estimate that we can get nearly about 100 to 200 tons of CO2 capture per hectare per year. And once you precipitate all the calcium and magnesium salts, this water, seawater, treated seawater, can be taken to algal ponds where algae can be cultivated. In that process, you capture nearly about 100 to 150 tons of CO2 per hectare per year. Put together, a conservative value of 200 tons of CO2 can be sequestered per hectare per year. So this is a very novel strategy, and which we are promoting it in the Middle East. This is another interesting approach where we advocate using seawater as an useful resource. So as I said, the Middle East countries are not having any resources like fresh water, arable land, but we need not worry about that one. Seawater is a valuable resource, and the seawater using the renewable power can be converted into various value-added products like green hydrogen and alkali, like chlorine kind of things. And once you get the green hydrogen, that can be reacted with the nitrogen to produce green ammonia, and it can be used for various applications. Once you treat the seawater through electrolysis system, you take that water and you can carbonate the seawater using the CO2 being emitted from the industries. And once it is carbonated, you can add catalyst to precipitate carbonate salts and hydroxide salts, which can be used for sequestering CO2, and we can use it for various other applications. And the seawater after the treatment will be taken to algal ponds where you grow algae that captures CO2, and you can use this one for various applications, including production of biofertilizers, feed, green concrete, and various other applications. In addition to that, the same seawater after algal cultivation can be used for cultivating seaweeds, mangroves, halophytes, and you can cultivate fish and shrimps. It's an innovative approach, and we filed a patent on this interesting concept. In addition to that, we also suggest this strategy of growing like reeds for wastewater treatment. It is called constructed wetland treatment system for wastewater treatment. It was already implemented by our partner in Oman. It's world's largest wetland treatment system, where they treat the wastewater coming from oil and gas industries using reeds. And these crops, when they grow, they produce enormous quantities of biomass. This biomass captures lots of carbon dioxide. That biomass can be harvested and used for producing biocrude or biochar. There are lots of applications. Then, just to give an example, we are in the business of planting trees and mangroves, and so far we have implemented 5 blue carbon projects in Saudi Arabia. However, we are seeing quite a lot of opportunities for us to implement the technologies which we have advocated earlier, because in future we need to implement various advanced technologies for carbon capture, because here the resources are limited. So in order to get carbon credits in the future, the technologies which we have explained, they require methodologies. So methodology development to getting carbon credits is very, very important, and we are working on developing methodologies for all the strategies suggested. So this is very important, and we have filed quite a lot of patents on the technologies which we have advocated for carbon dioxide capture in the arid region. And if you see, I just want to give a perspective to you. As you know, in the other parts of the world, people plant trees, people plant mangroves, and they capture CO2. And in the Middle East also, in the eastern coast and the Red Sea coast, we plant mangroves. You know, there is a big difference between the mangrove plantation activities being performed in the other parts of the world when compared to Middle East. Because in the Middle East, you are growing mangroves under a very harsh ecosystem. Harsh ecosystem in the sense the salinity of the seawater is very, very high in the eastern coast. As I said earlier, in the other parts of the world, mangrove is cultivated at 35 ppt salinity, whereas here we are cultivating at 65 ppt salinity. So if you see, you put lots of efforts and you cultivate, you plant mangroves, and the survival is it's very, very difficult surviving under harsh climate. In addition to that, they have to withstand quite a lot of harsh realities. In that process, the growth is very much limited and it captures less amount of CO2. But the thing, if you see, the efforts we put in here in the Middle East is quite large. In spite of that one, we get the credits, much less when we compare to other parts of the world, because they put the same effort, but they get more carbon capture, they get more credit because of ideal conditions. So it is not justified comparing the efforts put in the arid regions in the Middle East compared to the efforts put in the other parts of the world. So what is the solution for that? So that is what we are thinking about it. So we have to come out with policies and strategies which should promote the implementation of carbon capture projects in the arid regions. For example, we suggest creation of this Green Climate Fund for supporting carbon capture projects in regions with harsh environmental conditions. It is justified. You can't compare the carbon credits you get from the Middle East with the whatever carbon credits you get from the other parts of the world, because you put in more efforts, but you get less output. That is not justified. So considering this, we have to promote the carbon offset projects in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other parts of the Middle East. We need to provide subsidies and grants to offset the higher costs of these carbon capture projects in difficult environments. That is very important. And we should also think about creating differentiated carbon credits, because carbon credits are weighted based on the difficulty of the capture process. That is very, very important, because we can't generalize everything. Then we should also think about providing bonus credits that will be additional carbon credits or incentives provided for projects implemented in the harsher climates. So considering all these things, we know very well that here in the Middle East, the resources are limited, but we should not worry about that we have only limitations. We can change the limitations into opportunities using the strategies suggested by us. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me definitely answer. So any questions? So if you have any questions, you can contact us. We have given our contact information. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I thank the organizers of this event for giving us a nice opportunity. Thank you very much.